Hello, everybody. Welcome to the CT Sports Talent Show. My name is Christopher Saunders. I'm pleased to have on with me the Oxford boys basketball head coach, fifth year, Dan Rosen. Dan, I appreciate you coming on, buddy.
Hey, happy to be here. Always my pleasure. Love what you guys do and with the publicity that you bring to our high school athletes is it's tremendous. It doesn't happen everywhere, and I'm really appreciative of you guys as well.
I got to tell you, Dan, a player of yours, Mr. Minio, reached out to me on Instagram and said, "Hey, you got to have Dan on." And I was like, "Okay, cool. I'll ask him. Dan, you want to come on?" "Yeah, sure." "Okay, awesome. Mr. Minio, Dan's coming on." He was like, "Perfect." So there you go. That's how things work now with social media.
Absolutely, lightning quick. So yeah, we just finished practice. He's in there with the rest of the boys, getting a lift in and a little weight, a little strength conditioning, and yeah, been doing great. So um, he's one of my veterans, Rob Minio.
You know, Looking at it from the perspective of, because I was talking with Carfiello a couple days ago when I was previewing Seymour, and we had talked about the expansion of allowing teams that they qualify for the state tournament to be able to play depending on seeding if they have to play, in a playing game. And we were talking about how Oxford being a team that could benefit from that. Now, obviously, that's way down the road and the wins got to come. But I think having the NVL do that for another year and for the foreseeable future not only benefits the Oxfords of the world that are trying to get themselves on the right track again and with a young team in terms of postseason experience. And looking at it from what you guys have coming back this year, like you said, a lot of seniors, a lot of a veteran group. So that has to bode well for you.
Yeah, we're, cautiously optimistic. And I agree. I think it's a great rule that, let's get everyone who's in the state tournament, let's get them a tournament game. I'd been in the other situation a couple times. We were in that 3 years ago. No one in Oxford had ever played a postseason tournament. We went up, we played great. We lost to a really good team, but we would have loved that opportunity to play. Instead, you're scrambling to see if you can get a scrimmage or something to keep the rhythm because, athletes are we're creature and coaches certainly. We're creatures of habit. We want to play, practice for 2 days, play again. Practice for 2 days, maybe a day off on the weekend, play again. We get in those rhythms and it's tough. You're not always going to have it at tournament time. You gotta put out your best, but this is definitely a step in the right direction that can help prepare us. I mean, NVL tournaments obviously tough, but Division 5 tournament that you know I feel like it's harder to qualify than it is to compete at a good level for us. We've only been in it once. We acquitted ourselves very well in a 2 point loss. So that's not denigrating any other Division 5 teams out there, but you know, we can compete with most of those teams. I don't think there's any question about that, but we need to get there.
You know,
And that extra game, if we qualify, would certainly help.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100% on that. And I think to piggyback off of to the point that you and I were talking a little bit before we started, how last year was a tough season in a multitude of ways. And, going through the growing pains, going through those lumps, one of two things can happen. Either kids can say, "All right, this isn't worth it," and leave, or they could come back and say, "You know what? We got our teeth kicked in a couple times. We're tired of that." The Oxford football team, after having a fantastic season 2 years ago, this year it was again a lot of guys graduated, but they went through those same things. So seeing what Connors will do next year with them will be very interesting. I'll be interested in that, and I'm very interested in you
For
guys
sure.
because I feel like just like Woolkit, I feel like you and Woolkit are in the same boat where people are kind of not expecting on the outside of the NVL because they look just at the record and say, "Oh, one win, two win, whatever. Who cares? They're going to stink again." I feel like that's not going to be the same. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm too optimistic. You know what I mean? What do you think? Am I crazy?
I hope you're not crazy, and I hope you're not too optimistic. That'll remain to be seen. But I do think both Wolcott and us will be better. It's hard to say how many wins that will translate to. That's the thing, right? We know, we're going to be playing a lot of tough teams. Now, the schedule has changed a lot in the 5 years that I've been here.
Mhm.
We've gone to power divisions. We've gone to 16 league games, which gives us some scheduling flexibility and scheduling more teams that might be at our level. So that's going to help some teams like us and a Wolca and maybe a Derby or whoever um, get maybe more teams to qualify out of the NVL this year, which would be great. Um, so it makes a difference. And I think both the teams, it's a little cycle. We'll both be better, bring back some veterans. When guys play in a system for 2, 3, 4 years, it makes a difference, and at the varsity level, when you're constantly reinventing the wheel and having to get new players up to speed, that can leave you with some early season losses that you just don't get back. We don't play 35 games like in college. We don't play 82 games like in the NBA. We have a 20 game schedule and you got to get it done. And unlike the girls' side, we need 8 games to make the tournament. And on the girls' side, you only need 6. So it's not easy, but the new schedule in the NVL maybe is just making it just a tiny bit easier.
You know, and you mentioned the power schedule. I think doing the tier system is brilliant because obviously when you play against I like there's been so many years before they went to the power schedule where and back when they had the brass iron copper where if you were a Holy Cross and people wanted to see them play, let's say Woodland, well, Woodland was not in the brass, so they were only going to see them once, and then you had other factors involved and all that. But now because of the power schedule taking away the Woodland aspect, but let's say it's Holy Cross and Crosby, well, you're going to see them twice. Now they did anyway because they were public schools, but the point is you get to kind of test yourself against the other teams within your tier. You guys have Watertown, you've got Derby, as you mentioned. I know Wolcott dropped down to tier three because Wilby now moved up to tier two. Obviously you have yourselves and such, and Woodlands there as well. So when you look at that, coach, do you not try to go too far ahead and say, okay, we got to focus on like you told me, you have Woodland on Tuesday. We got to focus on them. We can't go any further.
Yeah, you have to, focus on what's directly ahead of you. Once you start looking ahead, we're playing that game. Oh, this is a must win. This one, you can get it caught into a very dangerous trap game. Um,
Mhm.
but it is nice knowing if we do our job within our division, we'll be where we want to be at the end of the year. And that's how we did it 3 years ago. We went 6-2 in our division, and picked up 3 other wins, and we had a 9-win season, which isn't great, but it's best that's ever happened here at Oxford. So we want to take care of business in our division. Hopefully, you can maybe pick off a non-division foe or two, and then we have the 4 non-league games. So
Mhm.
it's there, but we got to grab it. So no one's going to hand it to us. No game's easy. You know, we're not going into any games knowing that like we're just that much better than anyone we play. We know we have to go out and play well and play hard.
Mhm. No, you're right. And, again, it goes back to what we talked about where, yes, the games last year were pretty one-sided a lot of times, but as you and I were talking about, there were throughout the season last year, there were little spurts here and there where like some good things. It's not like it was all bad. It wasn't consecutive through a quarter. Through it, basically what I'm saying is a complete game. Oxford had a
Yeah,
tough time completing a game where obviously nothing has to be perfect, but being able to play solid basketball. And you mentioned how you have the veterans coming back. They've been through your system now for a couple years. You mentioned a couple juniors too. Do you feel like that complete game, something that in baseball is almost never done now? You and I go back and forth with that,
right.
complete games. But in basketball, it's a little different. Do you feel like this team can do that maybe more consistently now?
I do primarily from the point of view of better depth. Um, we had 2 season-ending injuries in the first 5 games last year.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Um, Lucas Kingsley broke his foot within the first minute of the first game. Really unfortunate. And John Bogart tore his ACL in the fifth game. Uh, I believe we were up at Watertown. We're up 14. Next thing I know, we're up 2 with 10 seconds left. Um, so anyway, we did it out. But our depth will be a little bit better this year, and that's a lot. We had 2 sophomores who are now juniors who had to play above their heads last year. No question they were thrown into the fire. Dan Bowen, who's now a junior guard, and Noah Calvert, who's now a junior forward. Both have worked really hard, and they've become good, solid high school varsity players. And you know, that's the silver lining, I guess, of having those injuries last year. Those guys played 20 varsity games and probably played 25 minutes a game in all of them. So, we'll have some additional depth this year with some guys, one newcomer and some other program guys that have been with us that'll give us a little more depth.
When you look at the upcoming season, obviously you have certain things that you want to be able to accomplish, right? You kind of have your checkpoints, right? Okay, I want to
Yeah.
qualify for the tournament. You want to do this, you want to do that. But looking at it from the aspect of the stats, and I know you're a whiz guy when it comes to that. Is there something in particular like turnovers or points off turnovers or rebounding, offensive, defensive? Is there a particular number that every single game this season you guys want to control, dominate, whatever word you want to use in particular?
So it's not really a stat, but we're focusing on staying out of foul trouble.
That's a stat.
Um,
That's a stat.
yeah, it is. It is. And for Mr. Minio that we talked about earlier, that's a big one. When he gets in foul, he does tend to pick up some fouls that as a younger player weren't smart ones. Hopefully, as a senior, and we've worked with him that will get better. He's working really hard in practice right now.
Good.
Um, so that we want to, we focus on points per possession, which is a great stat because it factors in everything, including offensive and defensive rebounding. So we want to be above zero point 0.9 points per possession. Um, when you're playing well, that's not hard. That's basically a bucket every other trip, and you're there. But if you start getting into turnovers, quick threes, then it's tough. And on the reverse side, you can also use points per possession, right? We want to keep teams below that mark, but that's a mark, you know, as a varsity coach, if your team is scoring over one PPP, you're in pretty good shape. And you might lose a game 87 to 82, but that's a great mark to be striving for. Like I said, that includes offensive rebounding, that includes your free throws. So, yeah, it's great to get to the line, but you got to make them when you get there.
Mhm.
Our scrimmage yesterday, we kept missing free throws early first half, which is, part of why we couldn't get things going. When you make them, good things happen. You can set up your defense, maybe a little pressure coming off a made free throw. All
Mhm.
these things tie together. That's why it's my favorite stat in basketball.
I also think too, free throw shooting, and again, I only played to a certain point because again, I wasn't very good. Couldn't really do much other than play defense like soccer. Same
No, I
thing.
wasn't. I wasn't very good either.
Oh, good. We can share. Good. We can share together in
Yeah,
riding the pine. I like it. We'll share.
fun bench stories. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, dude, the bench
Maybe
stories are the best.
an anthology of short stories called Bench Stories. I can see it. I'll get a publisher.
So when I think about it, Coach, right, at the end of the day, looking at it from the perspective of how this team could potentially be, right? And, again, I'm very optimistic. I think things could potentially be I think you guys can surprise a lot of people, as do I think a couple teams within the NVL. But one thing is for certain is that it's going to take the entire team, right? And you need everybody to buy in. You talked about Minio with the foul trouble. Obviously, some other guys are going to have to understand their roles and know what to do. You talked about being able to play offensive, being able to get offensive rebounds, defensive rebounds, and all of that. But the free throw shooting, I feel like, is key because A, they're free for a reason. My partner always says that. He hates when free throws are missed. They're like nails on a chalkboard to him. Nails on a
Oh, it's
chalk.
the worst. Yeah.
But also too, and this is where I come in looking at it from the outside, well, basically from the broadcasting table or wherever I am, is that when you're making free throws, you're it's unless it's one of those lucky ones where it just kind of rattles in and you hear that swish as a player psychologically you're like okay my stroke is good and now when you start to shoot now you're not going to make every shot but it's all about exactly right it's just about the repetition and getting that feel in that shot right am I crazy
No, I mean it's a confidence thing, right? You see,
yeah
maybe you're not getting going. We're always preaching, hey, let's attack the basket, let's get to the line. You make a free throw, all of a sudden you feel better, you take a breath and you build that confidence. Shooting is confidence. I mean, yes, you have to have the mechanics, but hopefully by varsity basketball level, most of them have a pretty good shot. There are some guys who don't, and they may fill a different role, but it's confidence. You step up, take it when it's there, make it, make good decisions about when you're shooting and when you're not, when you're ball faking, when you're giving it up. Um, it is confidence, and I've seen that grow in some of our guys. Certainly in the last year, Cliff McSwain is our point guard,
Mm.
terrific athlete, small point guard. He worked really hard. He's worked really hard in the offseason to get in better shape, to develop a yeah, 3-point shot. Said, Cliff, you don't have to make them all. You make a couple. Now the defense, everyone's going to have to respect you, and he can. He's shooting the ball as
Mm.
well as our other good shooters on our team. He really can step up. He's going to make some shots and surprise some people this year. Um, JJ Garcia, program kid off our bench, one of the greatest kids. Um, Plays his heart out every game. He got confidence, the other day our scrimmage, he came off the bench, first guy off the bench, comes in again, we're scrimmaging Weston, comes in off the bench, drains a corner three right off the bat, pick the whole team up. I love that. I mean, that is just what you want from a guy you're bringing in as your sixth man. Made a little floater. I don't think he scored the rest of the scrimmage, but man, that kid felt sky high, and he picked the team up to, after a bad first quarter, he picked the team up to where I think we won two of the next three quarters against a solid SWC team. Um, Played very well. So, these guys they're all making strides. But Cliff and JJ have really put in a ton of work, and it's showing.
Before I let you go, Dan, I appreciate you coming on. You were kind of giving some previews on some of the kids that people should be watching for, but as a program in general, you've been a part of it through obviously the highs, making the playoffs for the first time ever, and obviously what comes with a lot of programs where it's ebbs and flows. It's very cyclical. Things are going to be great. Things are going to be a little not wonky, but the teaching is a little bit maybe a lot more fun, right? Because then you can really break things down depending on what team you have. Not to say it's not fun when things are going well, but it just depends on how you view it. But the point is, though, coming into now your fifth year with the program, the community aspect, because I love that. Has the community really kind of, I'm sure they did after the first 2 years, but have they kind of fully embraced you and your philosophies and your thoughts and your ideas and all that? Are they giving you that big hug?
They are. I mean, Oxford is a wonderful community. I mean, I'm not from here, but I certainly feel like they've welcomed and embraced me. It was a little slow, to be honest, with the pandemic, right? It's my first year. No one came to games. We couldn't go see the middle school kids play. We couldn't go do what we do now, get involved on Saturday mornings with the youth programs where we bring the kids in and teach the younger kids in town. So we have that connection. Those things are all happening now, and yeah, they're embracing our program. They're giving lots of positive feedback to the boys. It's really nice to see. It's a small town. Um, I grew up 20 miles away. I lived 20 miles away in Trumbull, but really didn't know much about Oxford because at that time there was no Oxford High School, didn't have the identity. So we're continuing to try and grow all of that, and athletics is a huge part of that. Whether it's football, baseball, basketball, the girls' side, girls soccer had a great year again. Um, we're just I think we're continuing to grow into that. The school's still less than 20 years old. But the town has been great, and I'm looking to and implementing things to continue to grow that.
Well, Coach, I appreciate you coming on. This was a blast as always to be able to speak with you. You know what? Just because you deserve it, make sure you go to Rich Farms before you go home. Get some ice cream.
Love it. My favorite place.
Hey, Coach, best of luck this year. I'll be seeing you down the road at some point.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you having me on. We look forward to seeing you, Chris.
Always. I'll wrap things up here in the CT Sports Talent Show. Next time, stay safe. Remember, CT stands for Connecticut Talent. Enjoy your find them all. Enjoy the show, everybody, and be well.